Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, we are joined by Matt Robinson, who describes himself as an intellectual party planner. And this is going to be a conversation all about writing and teaching, which is very exciting. We love to talk about that sort of thing here. We're one of the few podcasts that still talks about writing and books and all this type of thing. And so we'll be diving into all that, and we'll learn about his whole past and history. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. So for all of my people who are into writing, that is excellent. I would like to note at the top of the show, if you're listening to this and you love to write and you're looking to write that book in 2025, the Cameron Journal Academy is now open. My two writing courses, The Power of Story, fiction, nonfiction, are separate. Same course, slightly different for each of you, is now available. So if you were waiting on that, head over to cameronjournal.com/coaching. And there's more information about developmental editing, personal book coaching, if you roll like that, or the course on the Cameron Journal Academy. So now that I've gotten my own ad read out of my way, corporate is very fierce about that. I'm very mean at me about that. Welcome, Matt, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thanks, Cameron. It's funny. I just came out with a T-shirt that says I work alone and I love my boss. So maybe you should get one for you and your company too.
Yes, exactly. That's quite perfect. So, well, why don't from the very beginning, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Matt Robinson. I'm born and raised in the Boston area, though I traveled pretty extensively for work as a journalist. These days, I'm teaching writing and entrepreneurship at a jail as part of the state prison system, and which I love absolutely. It's a greatly rewarding experience. I also work with a lot of entrepreneurs and nonprofits doing writing, blog posts, bios, whatever words they need. And I've been a writer for many decades. Started as a music journalist, wrote for Billboard magazine for a number of years. These days, I'm doing just kind of whatever comes along, hoping to get back into music writing. But I do a lot about I talk about food on WBZ, which is the local CBS affiliate here in Boston, part of the iHeart system. And I have a TV show in my hometown where I interview other authors called the Writer's Block. That's being nationally syndicated now. So just as I said in our intro interview, anything in those worlds, as long as I can speak intelligently about it, I'll give it a shot. I'm always happy to use my skills to support other people.
No, no, no. I appreciate that. Well, let's start from the beginning. Why did you get into journalism to start with?
I was a huge music fan all my life. It was a very important part of my life. Not such a great artist or performer, but just wanted to be around in that world. And so I worked in radio stations and at small record labels when I was in college. And when I graduated, I couldn't find an on-air job or a paid gig at a label. So I did some internships and was actually a paralegal for a year to see if I was following my father and grandfather into law, but I started going out to concerts every night and falling asleep at the office and had to make a decision. And in a very fateful discussion with my dad, he suggested that being a lawyer really wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and that the money was there, but maybe not the passion. And so, with kind of what I understood to be his blessing, I chose the road less taken and looked back on occasion, admittedly, but it's been a great ride. I've, like I said, traveled extensively and interviewed my heroes and been able to really get on the ground floor with a lot of interesting people and organizations. And now, and then teach writing to other people, which I think, especially these days, with all the options that people have to communicate, whether it's texting or AI or what have you, being able to get them excited about the written word has been really gratifying.
No, absolutely. Um, well, let's kind of go for the surface level. What do you think is the person you were proudest to interview?
I mean, interviewing Sir Richard Branson, when he opened up the Virgin Megastore in Boston, always sticks in my head because he was the only person to take my tape recorder out of my hand, and but a total gentleman, loved it. But I've really tried to make my space by interviewing people who aren't as well known. Like, for example, years ago, I started a column here in Boston when the celebrity chef movement was starting and people were going to restaurants because of who had opened it. I knew that I might not be able to get access to those people. So I started a column where I interviewed like the sous chef, the person, the coat check, the doorman, the bouncer, the bar back, just kind of the other people who you'd probably be more likely to interact with anyway. And the stories were fresh. They hadn't been done 100 times all over the place. So that's really kind of where I kind of made my mark, is just looking for the window when everyone else is stuck at the door type things.
Well, yes, that's very humans of New York. That's very soft white underbelly.
Yeah.
So that's yes, no, that's quite good. How was it being a billboard?
I mean, I loved it. I mean, I used to literally just go to New York on the train or the bus with a bag full of resumes. And one day I was just walking up and down Broadway and realized that I was at the Billboard offices. And I went into the lobby and I had them call upstairs and I said, "My name is Matt Robinson. I've recently sent you my resume and some clips. I'm wondering if I could come up and see somebody." And they said, "Be back in an hour." And 59 minutes and 59 seconds later, I was back in the lobby, and I went up and they kept me waiting for what seemed like days. But an editor came out and brought me back to his cubicle. And "You really want to write for us, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I really do." He said, "Well, I'm going to give you the expletive deleted story you've ever had." And I said, "When do you want it?" And he said, "I like your style." And that was the beginning of a pretty solid relationship for about 5 or 6 years, where I did mostly business. So that's how I got with the Virgin Megastore story, just sort of the people behind the scenes, the people at the labels and the record stores and the distribution companies. But that led to doing some liner notes for Sony Columbia Records and some press releases for Warner Brothers. So, way has just led on to way, and it's been never really a hard plan, but I've kind of just been cruising through it for decades and finding my way, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yes, well, for every millennial and Gen Z who's listening to this, that thing you're feeling in your chest right now, that's called rage. For someone who has the career trajectory that we all wish that we'd had, that's okay. Drink water is my recommendation. Drink
Hydrate, yeah,
water. We're
yeah.
gonna get through this together. Listening to you is like yeah, that's what I wanted to. That is exactly what I wanted to do when I started doing this. Instead, I ended up here doing this. So,
Right.
boo. Um, but let's talk amazing. I mean, I say all that to say, not to denigrate you, but to be a little bit funny, to say that that's amazing that you did that, sort of thing. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing and magical, and congratulations, sort of thing. Um and we're all very, very impressed. Let's talk process. How do you
Well,
make the
first
magic
I wanted to make
happen?
the point. I wanted to make the point for viewers and listeners who may be feeling negative, is that unfortunately that this is the distant past right now. I'm kind of on my second act trying to rebuild it. It was great and it was a dream come true, but it did end basically when the company started building Billboard.com. They let loose a lot of the writers in order to put the funds into the online presence, and so
I mean,
unfortunately,
I mean, let's talk industry for a moment. All of us. I mean, I started this in 2005 and I was 17, so that was the first time I sent out a submission. Um, I mean, so much has changed in the 20 years I've done this. That's frightening. Um, my birthday's in 3 months. I got to get used to saying that. A lot has changed. I mean, when I first started sending out submissions, I still had to send self-addressed stamp envelopes. That
yeah,
wasn't that long ago, all things relatively speaking. Um, and I mean, and let's face it, there has been the digital shift, which I lived through. My first magazine was in print. My second one was half and half. The Cameron Journal's never printed anything. I have digital version magazine versions of it. I have never put a single word of this thing on paper ever, not once. So I kind of got the tail end of the old system, a bit of the awkward transition in my early career, and then have to kind of ride the wave of the new system. And let's face it, employment in this industry has, I mean, the digital stuff has been great. The internet has been great from an employment perspective for people like me, people like you. It's been a complete disaster. Like, I mean,
It's tough. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you say that awkward transition phase. I remember, publications would start and they'd send you an assignment, you'd do it, and then they would change their name and disappear and not
yeah.
pay you.
No, no, I mean, I can't. I remember when I was freelance writing for businesses, my landlord was a tax attorney and also did my taxes. And he went through everything and he said, you're doing plenty of work. The problem is you're losing tens of thousands of dollars of people not paying you. He's like, you're working, like you're not sitting around doing nothing. You're working. It's just that no, you're not getting paid. And that, I mean, yes, I mean that was especially if you were just kind of a freelancer, not in any institution, not in a salary job on a W-2, that was an absolutely huge problem.
Yep.
I mean, I guess well, as extension to this conversation, how did you survive through that? How did you get through it?
I mean, just really being nimble, being willing to, like I said, my MO is basically if I can speak intelligently about it, I'll, my the kind of pithy saying I've come up with is if you want a story on nuclear physics tomorrow, I'm going to say no, but if you give me a couple weeks to learn about it, I'll probably take it.
Yeah,
Because having been a journalist, and having done the PR side too, I've worked with a lot of publicists who really don't seem to know what they're trying to promote. They're just filling in, a vanilla press release with the terms, and then you ask them for follow up, and they're at a loss. So I've always just made it my policy to work only with people I know, I really know and appreciate and believe in. I mean, I could be making more money selling widgets and doing tech writing, but I'm not the best person at it. There are people who live for it and I don't. And so I really just try to, but even in that, I've really been able to expand my wheelhouse because I just have a lot of different interests. So I've written about education and food and parenting and, really pretty much whatever comes along other than hard news and technology. But
yeah.
even about those, I dip a toe in. I learn what I can, and as I
No, I mean
said,
that's what I love. I mean, that's why I kind of wanted to do that. And the Cameron Journal really, it's a I always the top of the website says news and research and insights for me, but it's really, especially this podcast, is a journey of different stuff. The man who I'll record after this recording is he's a death preparation end of life documents guy.
wow.
But I think it'll be fascinating because people need to hear about that stuff. That's kind of more on our news public information side. And after that, I'll do the weekly news hour where I talk about a whole bunch of stuff. But yes, I mean, it is, I've enjoyed, going and research. My first book was a compilation of essays on everything from genetically modified foods to education, racism, all this type of thing. So I'm exactly the same way. I'm like, yeah, I don't know enough about it today, but give me a couple weeks and I'll come back with 3 experts, 5 papers, and a bunch of news articles. I'll make inquiries. I'll find out.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
no,
I
that's the
mean,
way I love to work too.
yeah, and then in turn, I love to teach because teaching helps me learn also. Seeing what's out there in the world and what my students want to learn about. I've opened my eyes to a lot of new topics as well. So they kind of feed each other, which has been really really rewarding.
Yes, absolutely. When the first real course I ever taught was in the middle of doing my MFA, and I was so blessed to have this show because I had to recruit my own students, and I was just kind of able to put out the call, and I got some people in. And that was definitely a moment of so grateful that I do this and have this I can just put a post on Twitter and get people to sign up sort of thing. It was so interesting to watch sort of someone who was kind of very well established and wanted to learn more about the publishing stuff, somebody who had lots of ideas, had written some things down, didn't know what to do with it, sort of thing, and was intimidated by the whole process of putting stuff out there. And somebody who was less concerned with the publishing, but more concerned about the creative process and all this type of thing. And kind of as we going through doing something for each of them and all this. So it was really fascinating. And I love teaching in small groups of 3 or 5 is really, really great sort of thing. So yeah, I definitely get that. But now that we've talked about industry, let's circle back to process. What gets the juices flowing for you?
I mean, as I suggest to my students, every idea is an idea. You just have to find a place for it. I mean, my problem is I occasionally get overwhelmed with all the projects that I want to do. For example, when I decided it was finally time to do a book, I had so many ideas and sketches and outlines on my computer that I literally found a friend who was an agent, and I sent her a list and I said, these are one sentence summaries of these ideas, and she just basically said, let's focus on these two for the time being, and whether right or wrong, that's what I've been doing subsequently. So the issue is, I've actually been just checked in with a friend of mine who's a book coach just hours ago, because I need a little more discipline. It's been too easy to back burner the book projects, and they just keep dragging on, and I need a little kick in the pants to get it over the line, that what I've been working on for quite a while now.
No, I completely understand. So that document box that you see up there, the big white box, that is my next historical fiction novel I wrote during my MFA. And it's basically done. There's a few minor changes and some chapters to dump. It has not moved from that spot in 3 months. I haven't opened that document box in probably about six.
Yeah.
Um, it is very easy. And I have three books that are half done, all this type of thing. I'm in the middle of editing one right now, and it's like it went out for line editing. I just have to accept the edits and make some changes, and then it's off to production. Even that's a struggle. Like, especially as I had three book clients last year. So the my one of my clients, their book is coming out in 3 weeks. Incidentally, it's done. So funny how that works.
Well,
Um,
but I mean, then again, but working for someone else, there's more accountability. I mean, I've never
yeah,
been late with an assignment for someone else. I'm always late for my own things, my
yeah.
books and my pet projects, because they're not, I prioritize the ones for other people because it's their reputation on the line. Mine's in the background.
Well, yes, and especially so I'm director of publications and anthologies at Something or Other Publishing. It's also a matter of it's not just them, it's also the production staff, the typesetter, the cover people, all this type of thing. And so it's like so for me, it's like not only can I not be if I'm late, it affects the workflows of 11 other people.
Yeah.
Then I start getting emails from marketing. When is this book going to be done? We go to production meeting on Friday. Why is this not sort of thing? That's where we're getting to with my book that I'm trying to finish. And so, and as this one is leaving the pipeline, it's very important to get another one in the top of the pipeline. So it's about to be. That's basically my week. This weekend upcoming. That's my weekend. I've really got to get that done because we need another project in the pipeline to guess. And this is again, 11 other people,
Right.
sort of thing, depending on to get this done. So it's yes, I definitely I suffer from the same thing too. And I don't know what the fix for that is, not yet anyway. I always tell people, I mean, I'm very good if you're having trouble getting started, I have kind of help for that. But I think, in terms of making your own work a priority, what do you think is your difficulty with that? I have my own theories about myself, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I mean, being a freelancer, in theory, I make my living from getting assignments from other people, so that was always a priority. In fact, this book, the images behind me, the cover of the first book I ended up publishing, it had been an idea on my computer for eons, and my late father had gone to Brown, and I kind of grew up going to Providence and seeing the football games, and I fell in love with the mascot, with the bear, to the point that in high school I told people that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. Waylaid onto way. Ended up not getting in, but we don't have to talk about that now. But it was this. I had always wanted to write a book about the mascots and like the fun facts about the Ivy League, because living in this part of the country, I lived in Harvard Square for 5 years, and you're just kind of always around in the culture. I didn't write it until my dad got diagnosed with dementia, because I realized, I wanted it to be like a tribute piece to him. And so then I finally had a schedule and, a deadline, and it was all self-imposed, but I did stick to it because it was for someone else now. And, that's kind of the bittersweet story behind getting my first book published. If he hadn't been sick, it may still be on my, half done on my computer. I don't know. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the book I'm working on now. I actually started. as an idea before this one, and it's been almost 20 years. So it's been quite a production.
Yeah, my first novel, I wrote the very first kind of initial ideas of it in 2007, didn't publish it till 2020. The book I need to finish editing, I started in 2020, and it's now finally sort of almost done, sort of thing. 5 years later,
Okay.
this one's cooking on two. So this is this is sort of thing. I have stuff that's been sitting for a decade now, sort of thing, and it's one of the things. I don't know if you feel this, but I feel like there's so much. I have the strongest like I need to clear the decks. I need to get some of these old projects out of here,
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, no, I really wish that I could just sit down and bang them out, but for some reason, I don't know, just especially because this book, I mean, the process was frustrating, and the reward, having written it for my dad and having that part was gratifying, but it hasn't sold as well as I hoped, and a lot of the schools have not been that supportive of it. So it's just made me kind of reticent to pull the trigger on the next book, because some days it's like, why bother? But
Yeah.
I've assembled a good group of supporters around me, and we're all gonna push it over the line together, I guess, like a rugby scrum at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a kind of a conventional wisdom, and I learned this from a wonderful expert, Joanna Penn, who's British and whom I've met. Um, and one of the things I learned very early on is that no matter who you are, the first book never does that well. And that's true for Vonnegut, Capote, Hemingway,
For
those
sure.
people. It takes some, very rarely does a debut do very well. I was happy when my first novel got interest from agents at all because I didn't figure no one would be biting on it. Um, and so it's yeah, it definitely in terms of a career in books, you definitely have to think long term in terms of building your library. And that's something I talk about in my course a lot. That's something I talk about with writers at Soup a lot. Is it's all about building that library over time. Um, and I tell people honestly, the writers at Soup we struggle with the most are single book authors. Those are the ones we always have trouble selling their books. We always have trouble marketing their books. Um, it's a slog, always. Those that have multiples, which is me, Wade Franson, others of us, those it's always easier to sell those. In fact, I found this when I published my novel and my short story collection about 2 months apart. Um, the minute I had three, sales of the other two improved. There were so many orders where I was sending out both my novel and my short story collection together. Some people picked up all three, all this sort of thing. So I found, according to Joanna, and I've even found this myself, 3 to 5 is kind of about the sweet spot in terms of getting that rolling. So if you're feeling reticent, either you or people listening are feeling reticent about, the first one was kind of a lagger, didn't do that well, immediately start getting into that second one and getting into the process because I guarantee you, once you have two, sales for one will improve. I don't know why this is psychologically. It makes no sense to me whatsoever, but it really does work. It really
I mean, as
110%
a
does
writer,
work.
the Met three, the power of three is a trend. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, absolutely. And so it's good. It's going to be good. So now I can only sort of see the part of the cover. Why don't
Right.
you tell us about the book behind you?
Okay, well, this, like I said, it's Lions, Tigers, and Bulldogs, the unofficial guide to the legends and lore of the Ivy League, and basically, it's the history of the league. It's about this, and I just really wanted to, especially having lived near Harvard, and I still meet people who, they say that they went there like they're being knighted. I wanted to show that even these schools put their pants on one leg at a time, as it were. So there's nothing negative about them, but it's like kind of goofy facts that even people, that one of the most rewarding parts of the book has been just the people who tell me that, I went to Yale and I didn't even know that, things so that just the research
Yeah.
was fun. It was a fun process. And, I've met a lot of really interesting people. So, there has been reward. Um, but the book itself is just sort of, the chicken McNugget was invented at Cornell, and at
Hmm.
the bell tower at Dartmouth plays Happy Birthday on request, and just sort of, and then of course the famous inventions, some of the famous alumni, famous sports events, architectural structures, the things the schools are known for. But each set has kind of at least one or two sort of goofy little what I call trivia, TRIVYA, about the schools. And the other benefits have been that uh, because of in an effort to promote the book, I started my TV show, which is now nationally syndicated and has now spawned a series of live author interviews that have taken me all over the country. So there, as with my writing, when something kind of stalls, I try to see what of it can I take and pivot elsewhere. And so overall, it's been a rewarding experience. But like I said, it has been a little frustrating that even the schools haven't really gotten behind it. But I just
Yeah.
keep knocking on doors, and way leads on to way, and you make it work.
Yeah. I might need to figure out a sneaky way to get onto that TV show. But um, so I get kind of why you do all this sort of thing, and I'm new to this part of the country. So I'm from Colorado originally, and I lived in Seattle for 10 years, and then I moved to Delaware about a year and a half ago, and
Okay.
unfortunately my apartment had a mold issue, so I'm currently living in Connecticut,
Okay.
and Yale's just down the road. Um Sort of thing. And so I'm very new to this part of the country. And I get you kind of grew up around all these people and all these schools and all this sort of thing, and that's kind of what inspired you. What do you think is the appeal of these places? Because honestly, I don't really get it. I've never understood it. Let me come like I don't get the appeal.
Well, I mean, the number of firsts that they have, and the number of Nobel Prize winners and president. I mean, there is all that, but at the end of the day, it's really what school is right for you. I mean, quite frankly, the past couple of years, these schools have not been performing so well in terms of their social stances and their political stances, and they've kind of fallen out of favor. There actually is a movement now to disband the league because it was based on athletics, and now with the NCAA portal, athletic conferences don't mean as much as they used to.
Mm,
Um, Also, with the movements to rename um, schools and institutions that are named after people involved in the slave trade or cultural appropriation, basically all of them were. I mean, Elihu Yale was head of the East India Trading Company, which brought most of the slaves over from Africa and Haiti to this country. And so will Yale ever get renamed? I doubt it. But it's not all the goodness and light and pomp and circumstance that they might have you believe. I mean, in addition to all the fun facts I found some really dark and disturbing things about all of them as well that I didn't share because I wanted to get I had to kind of kiss the hand that fed me. I didn't want the schools to get upset for my slagging them a little bit. But there is a lot of dark history. Um, I think like I said, growing up here, there is something different. When I lived in Harvard Square, people would say, "What school are you in?" I'd say, "Well, I don't go to school here," and they literally would ask me, "Then why are you here?" And I said, well, Cambridge has been a town since, before this school. And, there's other things, I felt like I had to justify my existence. And it
yeah.
just, it gets a little ludicrous to a point. But
No, I had the similar thing in Seattle when I lived there because I didn't work in tech, and I actually wrote this sort of story as an homage to Fran Lebowitz, the diary of living in a tech town without working in tech. And people would be the same thing, be kind of like, "You do what now? You're a right." For a while, I was a writer. Then I went and got jobs in marketing, all this type of thing. And they kind of like, let's like, well, who do you work for? I'm like, oh, I work for like this HVAC company, or I work for this small association, or or I'm a writer, depending on what I was doing at the time. But people would just be like, well, why are you here? I'm like, There's a lot else going on around here. I mean, who do you think cooks the food, keeps the sewers moving, picks up the trash? There's a lot of other people doing a lot of other things that have nothing to do with you people. And we're the ones that make, pretend it's a city. We're the ones that make the city a city sort of thing. But yeah, it was just a complete, complete
Yeah.
dumbfounded sort of
Yeah,
sort of thing.
there's a
Yes.
lot, there's a lot of tunnel vision. I mean, New England, I think, has a reputation for it, that I personally try to dispel, but I can see where people get it from.
No, I mean I have a bit of a tortured relationship. So I had applied to a Harvard fellowship coming out of my MFA at Goddard College in Vermont, which is sadly now closed, and didn't get it, and I was kind of excited to move to the Boston area and just a new adventure and all this type of thing, and I was super sad I didn't get it. And I was kind of, I was kind of, it was called, oh, coming from the middle of the country, it was always a far away sort of distant thing you knew existed but had very little impact on your life sort of thing. And I was kind of excited to kind of get into that whole world. But New England is a very, I find, as someone from the middle of the country and also from the South, I find New England very difficult. Living in Connecticut is the first time I haven't hated this region of the country. Like usually, like, so I did my first graduate degree at Norwich University in Northfield, Vermont, and I had to go up there for residency a couple times, and I hated every second I was in Vermont and couldn't wait to get out. Um, Fortunately, Goddard, we all got our residencies on the West Coast, so I didn't have to go to Vermont for all that sort of thing, which I was totally fine with, and was quite content to not have to go up there, sort of thing. And like this, living here has been the first time I have not been like, please get me out of this region of the country as fast as possible. Like I will do anything, sort of thing. It's very unique. But I've also had some people describe like, oh yeah, it's like being on one giant college campus, and I'm like, I don't know what. Are we living in the same plane of existence? I don't. Yeah, like it's doesn't seem that way at all. But it's yeah, it's a very unique part of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
I mean, I mean, I think because because of the history and the tradition and the families that literally go back to the Mayflower and Jamestown and all,
yeah,
there is that, but then again, you have a vibrant immigrant community and a lot of progressive, forward-thinking people who aren't stuck in the past. And I've always liked it. I mean, like I said, I've traveled a lot for my writing, but I've always liked coming back to Boston. I really do enjoy it here. It's a manageable size. I go to New York for shows and things like that once in a while, but I really like coming back here. And I mean, so,
yeah.
it's what you came from, what you used to, I'm sure, in great part.
Yeah, it's yeah, I've only been through Boston once. I've been to Western Massachusetts several times. I've only been through Boston once. And it would yeah, I find Boston very old world charming in the same way Montreal is.
Oh, yeah,
It has the same feeling as London, Paris, Geneva, um Milan sort of thing. And so none of the street system is completely random with no rhyme or reason whatsoever, which I always struggle with the East Coast because people here just built roads places. In Denver, everything is a square grid, and I miss it so much. Like when
so
the college town I went to, I could give someone a road intersection and they knew exactly where to go from where they were. No questions asked, no further instructions needed. It's amazing. And
yeah,
everyone lives through kind of like, isn't it this way everywhere? I'm like, no. I'm like, the East Coast needs reconstruction and urban planning. You can tell no planning occurred here.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a new section of town which was all warehouses for years, and they have a grid, but it's so overbuilt that you still can't get through it. It's ridiculous. So,
Yes.
we had a chance to try it again, and we botched it again.
Yes, it's just so yeah, it's so different, and I still like, I mean, Seattle has it isn't also not a grid and had its own issues, but I like literally was in Wilmington for a year and a bit, and I never really did kind of figure out how the road system worked. Like unless it was a place I went to a lot, I was still like, let me get out the GPS and find out what, and it's like right on some mill road. I'm like, I'm sure there was a mill here at one time, sort of thing. It was just, it is one of the things. Like, I love living here. I like it here better here than out west. Driving here is one of the most frustrating experiences of your entire life.
No, it's like,
Like,
I mean, it's like driving and skiing. If you can do it here, you can do it anywhere, but Colorado is better.
yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's why I always wanted to move to New York. I cannot move to New York, so I settled for New York adjacent in Wilmington.
Right.
Um, and uh, but there's part of me that's like, if I could afford Manhattan, it has a grid. I could function. I could think. I could comprehend. Like one day, if I strike it good, I'm moving to Manhattan where there's a grid, nice straight roads, like, and blocks and things that make sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's we
But,
have we
it's
have
like
fun here.
you get the knowledge. You have a part of your brain that just figures it out. That other people don't have. It's like people in New York who memorize the subway system and when the express is coming and when the local's coming. It's
Yes.
different skills for different needs.
No, no, it's absolutely true. And writing is the same way. Not everything is for everyone. Like poets should never write novels. Just don't ever do, like, get back to something existential and just like never write, sort of thing. Um yeah, yes, it absolutely. And I think it's, if I think, and this is also true, if you grow up in it, you have a different perspective on it than when you get transplanted into it, sort of thing. Like it was, um, it was, remember I was taking a girlfriend out to Colorado, and he was kind of like, it's like, well, it's like, why is your state a square? I'm like, because there's no rivers and we just had to put down some lines. We just had to say, yeah, our state ends here's fine, like, sort of thing. And well, where does that? Here's fine. Like, it's like there's no river to break that up. It's a play, and that's, and it was also, I mean, the big, as much as I love the East Coast for culture and it's better for the career and all this type of thing, nothing, and it's hard to explain it if you didn't grow up with that sort of thing. It's like there's nothing more magical than watching thunderstorms go across the Great Plains, in my opinion. That is one of the most to watch them come off the mountains and go out to the plains is one of the most beautiful natural phenomena you'll ever see in this country. And I speak of it in the sort of glowing, flowery terms, and people who didn't grow up with it are just kind of like, what is he talking about? There's nothing out there. There's no building. There's no nothing. I'm like, yes, that's the point.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the same thing when I'm in the South. I miss waking up. It's already hot because it's already 70 degrees, and you can see the humidity hanging in the air. It's absolutely sort of magical. But again, if you didn't grow up with it, which is probably why, you've spent all this time writing about New England, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I could take it or leave it. That's all this conversation has proved.
we'll
But
try to convert you. That's what we do. We try to keep you here.
yes, well, it's good. So what we're coming up close to time.
Okay.
So I want to do a couple things. Let us know where we can buy your book. Let us
Well,
know where we can find you online.
okay. Well, the book is at lionstigersbulldogs.com.
Hmm,
The email's right there. The TV show is called The Writer's Block from the Needham channel. That's Need Ham, like I'm making a sandwich and I need ham. And but it's syndicated through Teleview through I think about 40 different markets right now and growing. So that's been a lot of fun. If
wonderful.
you're in the Boston area and are an author and want to be on, just email me and I'll try to get you scheduled. And yeah, and just whatever. If you need writing, if you need writing instruction, I do like college essay review and things of that sort. So I just, like I said, I try to apply the skills as widely as possible to be of value to the most people. So that's how I put it together.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So any socials we should be following you on? Facebook, Twitter,
I mean,
etc.
my food stuff on X is Matt's Meal 73. That's the food segments that I do. I have Lions, Tigers, Bulldogs on Facebook. My main writing samples are at the Robinson Reporter, which is just kind of a holding place for samples of my stuff. I try to keep that updated. And then, hopefully soon there's always more product and more places to connect. But like I said, I try to say yes as often as I can, get the job done. And I really have, the best part for me has been the relationships I've made. And case in point, this has been a lot of fun. So thank you again, Cam.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
You.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.